Hello, you're listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better, and each episode I'll be talking to my guests about their epiphanies, their inspirations, and the magic of their workflow. And I'm here this time with Laura Cruz. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
Would you like to tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you come from?
Oh, I feel like if I put myself on blind date and they used to say, "What's your name and where do you come from?"
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I pulled that out.
No, I know. Well, people who are younger than you and I will have no idea what that's a reference to. But anyway, so I'm Laura Cruz, also known as the Dream Transition Mentor. I'm a coach and mentor helping predominantly women, but that's not to exclude men, who wish to escape the world of corporate and transition into their own business in order that they have what I call the 4Fs, so freedom, flow, fulfillment and fun in their life. And it's interesting because I think when I first started out on my journey in my business, I thought I didn't want to go down that kind of business route, but actually I firmly believe that in order to be in control of every aspect of your life, you've got to be your own boss, right? Because then you can decide what day you work, what hours you work, who you work with, you know, whether those people that you work with bring you joy, fulfillment, fun. So yeah, so that's what I do. So I just quite exciting actually. I trademarked like my title and my method, so the Dream Transition Method. I trademarked it because there's only one of me, right? I was going to say I'm extremely unique, but you're not extremely unique, are you? You're just unique.
It's a bit. It's like being a bit pregnant, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to be extremely unique. Yeah, so I just got the trademark back, so that's really exciting because that means that I can kind of really push on.
So what made you want to trademark it?
So I did some work last year with a coach who helps coaches to kind of work out their niche, like work out their ideal client and their niche and stuff like that. And I think before I was a bit, I started off, I'm going to help women with their confidence, which I still do, because obviously confidence is a big part of going out on stepping into your own business. But confidence on its own is, you've got to be confident to do something with it. You've got to take that confidence somewhere. And then I was like, oh, just follow your dream, which was a bit wishy-washy. And so it's really to niche down to help those women who perhaps in lockdown have realised that life is not quite what they wanted it to be, or lockdown has made them think quite differently about how they want to move forward. Perhaps they're fed up of commuting or the office hours, or they quite liked working at home and now they don't want to go back to the office again. Lots of different things, but the trademarking it, I think, is because I had a thing about having a trademark, and I think once I decided that was my thing, I thought if I trademark it, I'm going to stick at it.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's my commitment to it, but I love it too. When you start out on your own, it's a bit of a wiggly line, because what you think you'll do, you probably won't. What you start with, you don't end up with. You change as you go along. But this kind of idea fits in all the other areas of my business. It ties it all together. So my podcast, Your Dream or Mine with Laura Cruz, it ties in with that. I've been writing a book, it ties in with that. All these things tie up together, so it feels right. And I think it's a bit like finding the the right pair of shoes or something that feels good.
And I think when you've got that comfort and you don't need to think about it when you're talking to people about it, it becomes more natural. I think there's a whole sense of awkwardness about explaining to people what I did and like what the point of me is, and you have to hear yourself say it out loud a whole bunch of times and go, that's not quite right, and until eventually you kind of settle into something that kind of feels like you, and then it becomes a bit more second nature and more, and then I think you're more convincing when you've convinced yourself, maybe.
Oh, so true. I mean, just at the start of my business journey, as while I was still in corporate, actually, I went to a networking event and I was probably one of the newest people in there, just kind of dipping my toe into the world of what I was going to do. And it was all women. And I would go around the room, you know, we had stickers on. Oh, hi, you know, what do you do? And they'd say, I do this. I go, what do you do, Laura? And I'd go, well, well, I'm thinking of, and I was so unconfident. You're hearing me now, and you know I like to talk, but I just couldn't talk. And I was really quiet and shy. And on the train on the way home, I thought, what is wrong with you? Like, come on, Laura. And I think it was a bit of a turning point. It made me think, come on, if you can't tell people who aren't going to buy from you, who are your peers, if you can't tell your peers what you're going to do, who's going to buy from you? So you've got to kind of woman up and, you know, just say, this is me and this is what I do.
So, are you ready to get started to do yourself a favour?
I am a bit nervous.
Okay, we've got 5 questions. This is all about things you've learned, learning from experience, a little bit about like workflow and things that make your life easier. Okay. So that's the vibe. So the first question is, what's something that you wish you'd learnt sooner?
I think I wish I'd learned sooner that I could be confident in my own decisions, that I could change the course of my life. That was within my power. Okay. So I think I just felt like, I think lots of people feel like this. You get on the kind of conveyor belt of life, right? You go, right, you know, school, exams, university, leave university, get a job, meet a partner potentially, get married, you know, buy a house, get married, have some kids, and then just keep doing that, and, you know, on repeat until, you know, your kids start doing the same stuff that you did. And that's what you just keep doing. And I did that for a very long time until I decided that after a long period of reflection and thinking about it, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I changed that and I stepped away from that life that I had. And I wish I had learned before that it was okay to say, that's not what I want anymore. That isn't what I want. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't right for me. And that actually then to take back control of my life and to say, okay, so any decision that I make now is absolutely mine, which obviously comes with a huge sense of bloody hell. If I am the only one, it's not like I'm going to say, so do you think we should do this? It's like, it's on me. So every decision I make now is on me, and I've got 3 kids. So it was like, that was a balance between really freeing and kind of enlightening and uplifting, and also absolutely terrifying. But it was all my decisions, and I was a really steep learning curve to do all that stuff on my own, but it was brilliant. And then once I had that space, I could work out what it was I actually wanted to do with my life, rather than thinking that I have to keep going because that's what everybody else does.
Yeah, there is something paralyzing about that kind of corporate trap and the security of that world, because the idea of changing something, and especially if you've got your responsibilities, you've got your mortgage and your kids and whatever it is, and that corporate job is supporting that. When you're in the middle of it, it's quite hard to see, well, how do I change that without putting at risk all of the rest of this? Yeah. And then you're in this situation, I think, where rather than feeling like you have any sense of agency, and this is my experience, was very much that I kind of felt that any onward progression in my life, and to be honest, in that situation, your life is kind of your work. Any onward progression is kind of in other people's hands. Yes, exactly. So you don't get to say no, or I don't like that, or I wish that was different. You don't get that. And in hindsight, I found that very difficult, because I ended up being overweighting conversations with people who I thought of as gatekeepers, and I'd walk away from these conversations just going, oh, what did you do to him? Like, that was, what you didn't say, that wasn't witty, or that wasn't, important or insightful, and wasted that opportunity. And it started, you put a lot of stock in things where probably vastly overhyping the importance of it in your head. Yes, and I was talking to a client yesterday about what they want to do next, and they were still in employment. And I said, just imagine your dream role, like what would that consist of? And they kept coming back to where they work now. And I was like, no, not there. Just what would you like to be doing with your time? And it's so hard when you're in it to imagine what it could be if you weren't in it. That's why working with a coach is brilliant, because
you can't see, because all you see is the progression within that organization or similar role in another organization. You can't see that you could shape something and shape your life the way that you want it, because you're kind of programmed to, you're on that conveyor belt, keep going till you retire. Which is a really long time.
It is. It's a really long time, and it keeps getting longer and further away, I think, as well.
Having that conversation with a friend this morning. She's going, is it 67? I said, I think it'll go up again. Depressing.
Yeah. If you had learned that sooner, what do you think would have been different?
I mean, I so wish I'd learnt it sooner, but I also think I'm a great believer that things happen at the right time for the right reason. So I was changed my life when I was kind of 38. Things went very different for me, very differently. And that was probably about right. I kind of consider that like 0 to 38 to be part one of my life. And now I'm in part two. And part one was very good in many, many ways until it wasn't. And then now part two is fantastic. So yeah, maybe it's just because you look back and think, oh, maybe I should have done that sooner, but you just don't know, do you? You're in that phase, and you go on, and you can only see things with the benefit of hindsight and reflection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's easy to be wise after the event, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, should have done that 10 years ago. When I see peers in my kind of industry who are like in their early 30s, I think, because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this woman was saying, well, because I had kids, I needed to work for myself. I never once thought about working for myself when my kids were small, ever. Didn't even cross my mind. Couldn't see, because I was stuck in the corporate thing. Yeah. Couldn't see that I could do anything on my own.
You draw comparisons, right? Your peers or people who are at certain levels, who are at different ages, or people who've achieved things by certain ages. And I think that can be quite paralysing, and kind of, so you look at someone who's, they've got their own business, entrepreneur, or, someone they're doing really well for themselves, and they're, I don't know, 28 or something. And you kind of look at it and go, and I know certainly that one of the things that would make me go as well, I've missed that now. The time I'd have been, whatever it was, 42, 43, kind of go, well, oh yeah, but if I wanted to do that, I needed to do it then.
Yeah.
And then actually to that conversation about, retirement or whatever, it's whatever it is, 67 now, probably getting further away. And, the longer, by the time you get there, it's probably even further away. But that's the same amount of time again than it was between that person and where I am now. It's quite a long time. And when you actually start doing the maths on it, and it's not hard maths, to look at it and go, actually, you can start this thing, you can make those changes at any point in your life, and it doesn't need to be like you identify that early in your life, or you don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's no time limit. It's not a race. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. Yes, see what people are doing and take inspiration from it, and say, congratulate people for having the courage or the idea or the inclination to get out there and do it. But it doesn't matter that they're doing it and they did it earlier than you, whatever, I've got the age I am now, my kids are growing up. So I'm coming into that phase where it's interesting. A friend's just got a dog, and why don't you get a dog? And I was like, I don't want a dog. I don't want the tie. And I was thinking about it after. I thought, I'm just coming out of being tied to the kids all the time. I want to be free. I want to be free.
So let's move on. Next question is, again, it's about things that we learn and turning points, I suppose. So is there a book that you think of as being kind of pivotal to the way that you look at things now, or something that you read or heard or kind of had exposure to that made you go, oh, okay, it changed the way you saw the world or changed the way you approach things?
So there's this coach in America called Brooke Castillo, and I'm nearly going to do a really bad American accent, but I decided to save the listeners from that. She's quite interesting. So she's got a podcast, and she's very American. So, and there's no disrespect, but at times her accent, I go, oh, I'll give myself a break from that, and then I go back to it again. I love her podcast. I think she's fantastic. She's absolutely minted. She runs the life coach school in America, like worldwide. She's fantastic. But she's got this, she calls it the marble. She's got this like framework, and it's about how your thoughts create your feelings. And I was always the person that would be like, well, so-and-so made me feel like that. It's their fault. I feel like that. You know, I'm upset because of them. This is, you know, oh, you know, and I'd be all that person who was like tied up in that and get really like wound up, upset, angry, you know, whatever the emotion is. And through my own experience of coaching and learning about coaching, learning how to coach within when I was in a corporate role, and then taking that further and then doing, I've got a master's level certificate in coaching. So really progressing that forward and then using coaching myself. It's so fascinating because so many people say it. We go, oh, yeah, I feel that way because they made me. It didn't. You telling yourself that. You're telling yourself that that's how you feel. And it's once you separate, once you realize that all those thoughts, you know, your negative thoughts about something, you think negatively about something, you feel badly about something, then all of a sudden you feel a bit funny in your tummy and you've got a bit of a headache and you're not feeling great. And then it's no surprise that you then don't put the energy into that thing because you were feeling bad about it. And then the outcome is you don't get what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I can't remember the rest of the framework, but it's 5 steps, but it's absolutely brilliant. And I've used it to help friends when they're trying to, you know, approach a situation differently. Because basically she's saying is if you go into a situation, you kind of go, well, this is shit. This is just shit. And I can't change anything about it. You won't be surprised to find out that it stays shit. But if you go into that and go, well, this is shit, but actually maybe I could think slightly differently about it. Maybe I could approach that in a slightly different way and say, okay, so what I'm thinking about this is it's not ideal, but maybe I could do that. Maybe I could approach it in that way. How would I feel then? Really interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Self-coaching, because the book that she's written is called Self-Coaching 101. Self-coaching is incredibly difficult because obviously you're ever yourself looking out. It's very hard to kind of question yourself, but when you write stuff down, self-coaching is easier because you get it down on paper. If you follow a framework, you go, oh yeah, okay, so maybe I could look at that. You know, maybe that's not actually the reality. Maybe I could look at that a bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Externalizing things, getting stuff out of your head, because there's part of that in the getting things done where we get people to, you know, empty their brains and get things out there. And I remain impressed by the difference it makes, you know, and we've all done that thing of, you know, oh my God, I can't think anymore. I've just got to make a list, you know, you sit down and you do it. And invariably when I do that exercise with a group, there'll be some people for whom it's really, they now feel lighter and liberated somehow, and some people who feel more oppressed by this stuff because they're still writing after, you know, everyone else has finished.
Yeah.
But the point is that nothing's actually changed apart from they've written it down. And I find that relationship with what's in our head versus writing, how we feel about it when we've written it down, I find that a really fascinating phenomenon. It's
really interesting as well, because I think so what I want to do is to encourage women to say, or men to say, oh, they have this thought, oh, I'd really like to leave corporate, I'd really like to set my own business up. Oh, I'd really like to do that. The immediate thought that comes in is, you couldn't do that. What about the mortgage? Mm-hmm. What about the kids? What about, you know, the company car? What about this? What about that? And all of the negativity comes in, and immediately you go, no, that wouldn't work. Mm. But why don't you try exploring that? Why don't you try seeing if that could actually happen? Mm. Why don't you, get some stuff down on paper, talk to a coach, find research, find out a bit more about it, build up your self-confidence, look at how much you want it, like, so connect to your energy, like, and your kind of commitment to it. Work out what your why is and why do you want to do that? What are you going to get from it? Because if you don't know what you're going to get from it, when the going gets tough, you're just going to give up. So why do you want it that badly? What would it give you? Mm-hmm. And then work through how you make that work. But we so quickly say, oh, that won't work. Mm-hmm. Couldn't do that. I mean, and I found that myself when I wanted to go out on my own, saying to, some friends, oh, I'm thinking about going out on my own. Oh, why would you do that? Oh, so unstable, difficult, unpredictable. Because I had a pretty good job. I had a really good job, car, healthcare, pension, great discount for lovely food, brilliant, corporate entertainment, fantastic. But I wanted something different.
I think there's something about the whole pandemic experience. There's disrupted quite a lot of that comfort.
Yes.
Didn't it? So there is, I mean, I can't say honestly if I'd have left corporate and gone out on my own if there hadn't been a pandemic and there hadn't been redundancy, and if it hadn't been so hard to get another proper job, and you kind of go, well, I'll just try this because if nothing else, it's keeping me busy and I'm not getting depressed from getting rejection letters,
Yeah.
There's if everything had continued the way it was, I don't know whether I'd have made that leap. I know a lot of people who took that break and that kind of enforced period of time at home, and whether they were furloughed or whether they were made redundant or even whether they were just at home and not in that rat race kind of thing. People who, if they've not gone into self-employment or into a different, have certainly made the decision that maybe they don't need as much, or that actually there are different things that are important to them. But I do think we need some kind of disconnect from the grind and the routine in order to kind of challenge the way that we think and challenge actually what is a sensible thing to do.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other thing I was going to say about the pandemic, which is really interesting, is you did inverted commas, the security isn't as secure as you think. So you're probably only a month away from losing your job anyway, actually. Do you just see what I mean? Lots of stable companies went to the wall, such a shame. It is what it is. But in many ways, I think that people went, oh, hang on, maybe life isn't as kind of linear and as straightforward as I thought. So maybe I could do something different.
Yeah. What a time to be alive.
Woo! So
going to get into a little bit about like tips and recommendations and workflow and so on. And I'd like to know, what's a thing, and it's not, you can't have your laptop or your phone, but you could have apps and stuff. What is something that you use every day and could absolutely not be without?
Am I allowed to say my office? I think last time I did a call with you, I was perched on the edge of a sofa with very uncomfortable. It was really bad for my back and looked wholly unprofessional in like when I was doing training sessions from a sofa. So I built an office. Well, not me personally. We had somebody build me an office at the bottom of the garden last summer, which was a blooming game changer. It's brilliant. I mean, apart from the muddy feet, we've got to put a path in because I am getting muddy feet, like either traipsing it in the office or back up to the house across the grass. But it's one of those things, again, I didn't even think it was when the pandemic started, I would have worked from home before, just from the kitchen table. Then I had 3 kids homeschooling, all of whom needed to eat every kind of 90 minutes. And I couldn't sit at the table. So then I just got a tape measure out and just started looking at the kind of overgrown bit at the bottom of the garden, saying, oh, maybe I could have an office there. And here I am sitting in it, and it's marvelous. It's absolutely amazing, because when I come down here and sit in my office, I suddenly feel like I'm in work mode. And actually, I found it quite hard in the house to make the distinction between, because there's already somebody coming in, interrupting me, asking me something. Mum, can you do this, Mum? And I just love it. So I come down the garden, my cup of tea in the morning, and it's lovely and warm. It's everything I want it to be. It's my space, so I can see clients here, face-to-face clients. And but it's just got a gorgeous aesthetic feel to it, and it makes me feel like, it makes me feel really kind of special and proud that I've got this and it's mine. It doesn't belong to anybody else in the house. Everybody in the house has a room except me. My husband's got an office in the house. I didn't have a room that was just my own. So this is mine, and nobody comes in it except me. So this is my thing. I know it's quite big. It's quite a big thing to have, but it's my space. And when I'm in here, I'm in work mode. Yeah. I'm not Mum, I'm Laura.
Yeah. And I think there's something about, well, as you were saying earlier, about like trademarking your business and having that kind of a sense of personality and your thing. I think you want to be, you want to be able to feel that the version of you that you present when you're on a call, say, or doing a workshop, things like that. If you are, crammed into a corner, and not everybody has the possibility of not just being crammed into a corner with the wardrobe behind them or whatever. But it's a bit like you're putting on your big coat, and you've got a comfortable space, and you know that you're not going to get interrupted. You know, you've got the technology is reliable, and you're in a comfortable place where you're not going to have to shift around. And all of those things are just like, there's something else you don't have to worry about.
Yes, and I also think it feels, it makes it all feel real.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that when I was working from the sofa didn't. This feels like, okay, so this is actually real. Okay, so people pay me because I'm really good at what I do, and this is where I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because my husband works at home, always has done all the time I've known him, and he would say, "Oh, I've got a call," and he would go off, and I would think, "Oh, that sounds really good," and that's what I do now. Just say, "I've got a call," and off I traipse down the garden into my own little haven.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Excellent. Do you always work there? I was going to say, do you have like different kinds of work that you do in different places?
I have sofa days sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I just sit and watch. I love reality telly. I know my husband, it drives him nuts. He's like, I can't believe somebody with your intelligence watches this absolute bilge, but I love it. Anything reality based. So yeah, sometimes if it's a bit grim outside, I just think, oh, I'll just sit and watch telly, and while I'm doing stuff on my laptop, just pootling. It's fine. But obviously down here, I record podcasts. I record, do like training, coaching sessions and stuff like that. So I don't go out as much. I think I definitely should take myself off to do a little bit of work elsewhere sometimes with a coffee, because sometimes I miss people.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about myself from working from when I started working from home, in pre-pandemic, and I noticed it a little bit in when I worked in offices that had options, that I think I naturally go to different places for different kinds of work.
Yeah.
So some days in a big, in the big, beautiful open plan office that we were in just before I left, I wouldn't actually ever sit at a desk. I wouldn't take a desk. I'd go and sit at a easy chair in the kitchen and check my emails from there, and then and I just kind of found that, and I found it again, here, that there'll be a point where actually I quite like the general chaos of being in the room with my kids while I'm, tidying up some emails and stuff like that. And obviously I can't do that if I'm having a call, because that would be no help to anybody. Like, nobody benefits from that situation. But at the same time, I also don't want to be stuck in this room all day. So yeah.
And I think as well, it depends on how I'm feeling in myself, but it also depends on what sort of thing I'm doing. So sometimes I listen to music, and sometimes, or a podcast, and then other times I'll put it on and it's so distracting I have to turn it off. So I think it depends. Sometimes it's like you're so engrossed in what you're doing, either as a distraction or you don't even hear it anyway because you're engrossed, or you go, do you see what I mean? Like, it just depends. Sometimes I can cope with it, and sometimes I think, oh my God, I just need complete silence.
Yeah, I think there's something about the kind of work, definitely, for me, in that if I'm trying to write something, I can't have other words kind of around. That's something I really notice. So if I'm trying to write an article or put together a piece of training or something, and then music has to be instrumental, otherwise I just can't focus on the words. But other things, it doesn't make any difference. So it's definitely identified more sort of weird foibles about my practice since I've been working for myself, certainly. So what's the last shiny, exciting thing you acquired in either work or life that you kind of like make?
Well, that's such a great question, because this week I decided to finally, I've been coveting some weights for home, obviously since the pandemic, since lockdown, when you couldn't get them for love and money, and they were really, if you could get them, they were hideously expensive. So I'm a member of a gym, but I don't really like it's a cheap gym. It's one of these kind of, there's nobody there, you let yourself in by the keypad. It's cheap for a reason. It's all right. But I don't like the classes they run there. And I used to really love doing body pump, which is, and I like weightlifting to music, which, some listeners will go, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. But I like it. And combat is like it sounds like, punching the air to music. But combat you can do at home, but I needed the equipment. And I just didn't like body pump, the class there. It didn't feel that great. So I kept looking at these weights for ages. And then the other night, I just thought, why don't you just order them? What are you waiting for? So I ordered them, and they came the next day, and I was so excited they came. Realised they were actually quite heavy, and then got up the
they're
next
weights, Laura.
No, I know, but realised like how, because I don't really do weights at the gym. So then I was like, oh, these feel quite heavy. Anyway, so then I got up on Wednesday morning and it's normally an hour's class at the gym. I did a half-hour workout, like they do like mini ones. And I was thinking, oh, wow, I'm still in pain now. Only half an hour. It was painful. So yeah, so there's lots of muscles that are going, hey, Laura, you haven't done anything with us for a long time. So so I'm going to get better over time, but right now I'm looking at them now. They're at the end of an hour. I'm going to do a session on Sunday morning, but it's ridiculous. It was about 120 quid for both, for the set of weights and the bar and the step. But I'm ridiculously pleased with them. I don't think I've bought anything that exciting for ages.
That's adorable. I used to buy quite a lot of stuff when I had disposable income. I used to buy quite a lot of stuff, especially books and just like random bits and pieces, and do that a lot less now and so on. But what I do quite like is I give myself little sort of milestone type things for, when business does a certain amount, then I can do things. So I don't know if you can see just over there, I've got some like little random bits and pieces in the cubby hole. There's a couple of and a couple of Funko Pops, and that DeLorean's actually a Transformer. That was a proper kind of like, I did my first invoice, and I'd been sitting there hanging my nose over this thing and grown up toy shops for quite some time. And I invoiced my first proper piece of work that was like my proper piece of work, and I was like, a bit of it's going to go on that, and it just kind of sits there being a toy on a shelf, but it gives me quite a lot of joy to just kind of go, I know when I bought that and why I bought that, and it's not that owning it that's the important thing, it's what it represents more than anything else.
That whole thing about whatever you earn, you live up to that, and I definitely did that. And I remember feeling quite irritated by my mother. Sorry, Mum, if you're listening. But when I was leaving my corporate job, I needed to buy a car to get my company car back. So I managed to save to buy a car in about 4 months. Managed to save enough. I mean, it's quite an old car, but I managed to save enough to buy the car. So I told my mum, thinking she'd say, well done. And she goes, well, that just shows how much money you waste normally. And I was incensed by the comment. I was like, oh, it's such a mum comment. And actually, you were right, Mum. I just spent a lot of money. I'd see a book and go, oh, I'll just have that and order it. And then it would come and I wouldn't even think about it, wouldn't even look at it. Or I'd buy new clothes, or I'd do this, or I'd go and get pissed in the pub, or I'd go out for lunch. I'm not saying that those things aren't lovely, but didn't really have much control over what I was doing. And now, because like you, there's less, I'm much more mindful about how I spend. When I do spend money, when I do buy myself something, I'm really pleased with it. So like I say, my weight, really pleased with them, because I've wanted them for a long time and I really thought about them. And even better, Tim, when I went to buy them, they were only on bloody sale. I mean, honestly.
Excellent.
Like serendipity.
Yeah. You just made me think, isn't it annoying when somebody says something that's not what you want to hear, and then and you go, hang on a minute, and then you go, oh, but actually they're right. I hate
it. Took me some time to admit that she was right.
Yeah.
But she was right. She was right.
I remember years ago, there was a bunch of friends with kids, and we all went camping, and I hate camping. I really, really hate camping.
So I hate camping. Yeah.
It was just like this worst thing ever invented. And I sort of crawled out of my tent being like angry just because I'd been in a tent. One of the mums was milling about, and she was making breakfast for the kids, and she's like, do you want some orange juice, Tim? And before I could even growl at her, one of the kids was like, oh, Tim doesn't drink anything that's not got caffeine or alcohol in it. And I was just like, what? And it was like, actually, that's fair. I'm much better now than I used to be. But yeah, certainly at that point in my life, that wasn't accurate. An accurate assessment by like whatever it was, 7 or something. But there we go. Right, last question, Laura. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Okay, I want you to complete the sentence. Do yourself a favour and
allow yourself to dream bigger about your life. Allow yourself to dream bigger about all the things that you've hoped for in your life. And when I say dream, I mean, don't dream with oh, but if I did that, I couldn't because of that. Like literally go, blank piece of paper, if I could do anything I wanted, what would that look like? And I'm not saying you get that, but I'm saying you might be able to find a level of that, a version of that, a percentage of that Why couldn't you have that? I'm sitting in an office at the bottom of my garden. I work for myself. It's 2 years since I left corporate. I work for myself. And I help other women and other clients to do the same and to build the confidence to get out there and do what they want to do. Pinch me. I'm dreaming. It's brilliant.
Fabulous. Thank you, Laura. Where can people find you?
So you can find me at my website, lauracruz.com, or you can come and find me on Instagram. I am the Dream Transition Mentor.
Excellent. And remind us what your podcast is and when it's available.
Your Dream or Mine with Laura Cruz. It comes out on a Friday.
I'm really glad we made this happen finally. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope it makes sense.
It more or less made sense. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Do Yourself a Favour, the podcast about learning from experience and the things we do to make our lives easier. Brought to you by Make Work Work Better. My name's Tim Sisney from Make Work Work Better. Our theme tune is by The Titanics. Talk to you again soon.